Just be happy with who you are. Just be happy with who you are. Just be happy with who you are.
Okay, hi, and now we're going to look at part 2, and this is what we're going to do, is we're just going to review of the theoretical perspective as anxiety disorders. And we're going to start with the psychodynamic theorists who view anxiety disorder as an attempt by the ego to control the conscious emergence of threatening impulses. So feelings of anxiety are warning signals that threatening impulses are nearing awareness. The ego mobilizes defense mechanisms, as we talked about in chapter 1. And I put them up on the screen. I'm not sure what side of the screen I'm putting them on, but to divert the impulses from the id, thus leading to different anxiety disorders, where you might come up with phobic object symbolizes an aspect of the unconscious. So the phobic object symbolizes some aspect in the unconscious conflict, for example. This psychodynamic model is difficult to test, as the unconscious impulses, to date, they're difficult to determine the existence of. You can't see or hear the unconscious impulses. So it brings into question whether or not that's in fact what's happening. It's theorized. Now, using the behavioral perspective, we have, under this banner of behavioral perspective, we have the learning theorists, and they explain anxiety disorders through conditioning and observational learning. We've talked about those in the previous weeks as well. Hobart Mower's two-factor model incorporates classical and operant conditioning in the explanation of phobias. Basically, previous neutral objects, situations, are paired with an aversive stimuli, sort of like when I mentioned about the word psychology being paired with a loud noise and developing a phobic response perhaps to the word psychology. That's classical conditioning. Then by avoiding the word psychology, we are reinforced that the avoidance works. So if we don't show up to class to avoid the word psychology, we've avoided the word psychology through operant conditioning. Now, phobias, however, appear to be moderated by cognitive factors, such as self-efficacy expectations. The principle of reinforcement may also help to explain patterns of obsessive-compulsive behavior. People may be genetically predisposed to acquire certain types of phobias that may have had survival value from our prehistoric ancestors. Cognitive factors may also play a role in anxiety disorders, such as overprediction. That is to say, our faulty thinking can perpetuate wrong perspectives. So this overprediction of fear or irrational beliefs, self-efficacy expectations, self-defeating thoughts, and attributions for panic attack are thinking errors of or misdiagnosing, if you will, misanalyzing situations that are threats. Something that is not a threat becomes a threat. A dog, because we've got an experience of a bad experience with a dog, we could over-predict that not only that dog that scared us, but every other dog will also scare us, and that's faulty thinking. Now, this is where cognitive perspective comes in. They focus on how our dysfunctional patterns of thinking may set the stage for anxiety disorders. So the thinking is self-defeating thoughts can heighten and perpetuate anxiety disorders. Irrational beliefs may involve exaggerated needs to be approved by everyone, or everyone that you meet, or to avoid any situation in which negative appraisal from others might arise. Now, that certainly will affect your quality of life. The cognitive perspective also considers the effect of the role of oversensitivity to threat, or being particularly anxiety sensitive, or the misattribution of panic sensations. To clarify, this model suggests that some people are prone to panic disorders view certain bodily cues like palpitations, sweating, or external stimuli as threatening or dangerous, either this through learning or through oversensitivity. And it may not be that for everybody, but for that person, that's their thinking, and that's what they say would be defaulting or erred thinking. These perceived threats are made with apprehension, which affects the intensity of the bodily sensations, like increased heart rate, rapid breathing. This leads to a misinterpretation of the signs of panic attack, or worse, catastrophe, which further reinforces the perceived threat. And the cycle repeats, and it keeps going, and that strength of that belief gets stronger and stronger without ever recognizing it's faulty thinking. Therefore, the cognitive factor appear to play a key role in the development and maintenance of anxiety and panic attacks, perhaps even in the solutions or the treatments. The cognitive perspective really emphasizes our repeated negative self-talk can contribute to our perception that we cannot handle something, or that the cycle through which our dysfunctional, faulty thinking so much that we contribute to our own obsessions, our own phobias, and our own anxiety. The power of our thinking can have significant negative as well as positive effects on our life experience. We're not always aware of what our negative thinking is because we don't self-reflect very much. Sometimes it's just worthwhile at the end of the day to sort of review your day and ask yourself, what have I been saying to myself? When things went badly, what was I saying? And when things went well, what was I saying? To move to the biological perspective, they've sought explanations for anxiety disorders on the basis of studies of genetic factors, neurotransmitters, and the induction of panic by biological means. For the genetic part, much is being made of the role of heredity, the genetic or gene contribution to susceptibility to anxiety-based issues. This, along with environmental issues, is something that we'll find reoccurring in many chapters. If you can remember, and you should be able to, week 1, the diathesis stress perspective enters into evaluating cause. Now, as far as neurotransmitters are concerned, GABA, G-A-B-A, is involved with anxiety, and it's a neurotransmitter. When there is low GABA action, there is low protection for anxiety. Therefore, we experience more effects of anxiety when there's low GABA. We can also look to the role of serotonin and norepinephrine in the experience of anxiety disorders. The biological role in both panic disorder and OCD is getting a close look, in particular, the neural network functioning and the lack of functionality. So, let's tie it all together. Well, not all people who experience traumatic events they won't all develop phobias or anxiety reactions. And in itself, that's important to note. Not everybody is equally going to be influenced. So some people may inherit a genetic predisposition, this being the diathesis, that makes them respond with greater negative arousal or makes them more likely to panic in response to changes in bodily sensations. It doesn't guarantee a psychological disorder, but it may predispose someone to more likelihood than somebody else. Anxiety disorders can develop from complex interactions of environmental, psychological, physiological. These factors include behavioral, social, environmental, biological, and emotional cognitive factors. And so what we can see in terms as our cause is much more complex than simply you're just panic easy, or you just like to repeat things. It's much more complex than that. All right, that's the end of part 2, looking at some of the causes. Again, it was a brief review. You'll find more information, of course, in your textbook. The 3rd video, we'll be looking at treatment. All right, let's keep it going.